starting off with Daily Trust. Now, boldly on the front page of Daily Trust, we have the federal government borrows 13.21 trillion naira from World Bank in 20 months. Fresh $1.1 billion loan approved in 1 week as debt profile hits 142 trillion naira. Multilateral loans vulnerable to corruption, says experts. Now, you would see that there's a clear infograph on World Bank loan since 2023. They have different World Bank loan with what it is they are meant for. And if you joined our show yesterday or you'd listen to, the conversation we had with our financial analyst, he made statement like the loans are not being properly tailored and it makes it look like it's vulnerable for corruption. You see a loan of $1.57 billion in September 26 to support federal government to strengthen human capital through better health for women, children and adolescents and building resilience to effect of climate. I mean, what exactly is it for? Things like this is what pushes corruption. But then again, to get more details on that, you could check on page 3 and 4 of Daily Trust newspaper, and also you could check Trust TV's YouTube page for a detailed conversation on these loans and how they fuel corruption and what it means for Nigeria. That was on our conversation yesterday. Now, still on Daily Trust, Natasha defies ban, lands at rally ground in a chopper. Edo governorship, APC, PDP confident of victory as tribunal rules today. Man absconds, his wife gives birth to triplets. Still on Daily Trust, Uromi killings, DSS has arrested 2 principal suspects, says Edo government. Kano government reiterates call for justice. Victims' right to freedom of movement violated, says the NHRC. You find that on page 5. Now, those are the stories we have on the front page of Daily Trust. Do well to grab yourself a copy and keep yourself informed. Let's take a look at Guardian. Moving on now boldly to Guardian. Discos may take 11 years. 1.4 trillion naira to bridge 7.2 million metering gap. There's an infograph on that on Nigerian electricity metering crisis. It's very detailed. Top performing discos Ikeja, Ibadan and Abuja. Low performing discos Port Harcourt and Yola. That's a very detailed story there. You'd find that on page 6 on Guardian. On the top, I feel depressed over Rivers emergency rule, says Fubara. And Natasha returns in chopper, addresses supporters at Ihima. Trump's third term bid, bad omen for Africa, says Uzekome and other lawyers. You find that on page 3. Still on Guardian, controversy over leaked tribunal judgment as Edo government, APC, PDP claim victory. Federal government to withdraw idle oil blocks, charge IOCs to drill or drop. Kano justifies Sanusi's reinstatement as monarch, pays Salah homage. And Oko and Don decry deplorable state of Nigerian universities. Niger exit multinational joint tax force and Nigeria's net FX reserve rose to $23 billion in December, says the CBN. Those are the stories on the front page of The Guardian. Grab yourself a copy. Now let's move over to This Day. On This Day newspaper there, boldly, Cardoso jubilant as net FX reserves hit 3-year high, swells to $23.1 billion. Tinubu sacks Kyari, Akinyelure appoints Bayo Ujulari as new GCU of NNPCL. On the top, $5 billion Africa Energy Bank gains momentum with contributions from Nigeria, Angola, and Ghana. Obi, there is no democracy in Nigeria. Federal government still hounding me. Those are the stories you have there on the front page of This Day newspaper. Do well to grab yourself a copy and keep yourself informed. Now, joining us to review some of the headlines of the paper, we have a former director of News Voice of Nigeria, Ben Shamang. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a minute. It's good to have you join us this morning. But let's touch a bit now to something that people have been talking about. We'll touch before on Daily Trust. Natasha, she still went ahead despite the ban from the governor on political rally, saying no convoy, no rally, and she decided to land in a chopper. What's your take on that and how all of that is playing out with what she's going and how it's all playing out basically?
I think Natasha has beaten them very, very well because here you are, you did deployment on ground, vehicular movements are banned, you can't enter the area, roadblocks here and there, and the local government chairman imposed a curfew. And he said there won't be any rally. Natasha is also telling you she's not doing a rally. She's going home. And you can't ban her from going home. And so all efforts, arsenals that were deployed to ensure that she never returned, they never thought of the other option. That she could go there by a chopper. And she landed like a hero. And you see, they are making her more popular. If some of those persecuting her today, as we are talking, are to stand for election in Abuja, maybe Natasha will beat her, will beat many of them. They are just simply making her popular, and she's an epitome of democracy. She defines democracy, so to speak, in terms of free movement, in terms of free expression, free speech, and the people also exercise their rights. The police cannot tell people not to move around. And when there are also no rallies, you said there were rallies, and you hold her also responsible for any breakdown of law and order. Now, how many hours after that event, we've not heard of any incident. I think that they were simply crying hawks when there was none. So I think that Natasha is truly defining what democracy is all about. She
All right.
is an Amazon.
Indeed. All right, now moving on to the Edo Governorship Tribunal. We saw that, there was the leaked tribunal judgment yesterday, and they're still expecting tribunal ruling today. What are your expectations?
Well, I don't know how people are now saying each side is hoping for good judgment today. In other words, that uh, PDP is claiming they will win, APC is claiming they will win, or maybe even Labour claiming they will win. But the leaked one, what is it all about? So who is leading? That everyone, each of these candidates, including the sitting governor, they're claiming that they've won the election. It's now there for the judgment to be delivered, and again, this is coming very close to the heels of what happened in Uromi. Will there be an issue? We are hoping that sanctity of life will be taken seriously.
Okay.
We just hope that wherever or whichever side the judgment goes to, well, there are always room for appeals. Even though at the point some people will just hit the chest and say, well, we meet in the court, as if the court is now a disco ground or disco hall. Even in a disco hall, there are rules. And so let's wait and see.
All right. While we're waiting and watching, we're seeing that the federal government has been on a borrowing spree since 2023. On the front page of Daily Trust, boldly there we saw a very detailed infographic on how the federal government borrows 13.21 trillion naira from World Bank in 20 months, since 2023. And this borrowing keeps happening and happening, and Nigerians are saying they're not seeing the dividends of it. What's your take on how much the country has borrowed so far, vis-a-vis, the dividends, or seeing what it has yielded?
Now, you see, once upon a time we were hearing of Abacha loot. You collected this money, so which project has it been used for? You just said you plowed it into the system. Now we're seeing all manner of loans. There was a time Obasanjo actually removed Nigeria out of debt. We became zero, no burden any longer. But we are seeing that it's just a galloping kind of super inflation, supersonic kind of borrowing here and there. But you see, it's really not about the borrowing itself. It has to do with the use of these loans. When you say infrastructure and you even add an adjective, critical infrastructure, where are these infrastructure? See, sometimes you hear of railway. Railway is just one-sided. It's not around the federation. You hear of some east-west roads or coastal roads. What about the middle belt of Nigeria? We don't get to see that. When will the railway reach Meduguri? When will that reach Makodi? When will it reach Nguru? When will it pass through Kavanchan, pass through Mancho? So that people will also know that, look, we are part of this federating unit. Therefore, these loans that are being received, that everybody will pay, should not, concentration should not be just on one side. We are developing the seaports with these same loans, as we are hearing. We are developing airports. So when would the masses also benefit from all of this? At the point is, okay, we have to talk about the healthcare system. We do have primary healthcare system where they've been used. So it's a whole gamut of some disturbance when you hear of loans being taken, and the manner in which and the manner and the way in which they are being disposed for what project. They need some oversighting by the National Assembly, and that is their one of their primary functions outside lawmaking. So when they approve that funds be disbursed, they should check and see. If they approve too that loans should be collected, they should follow that seriously and see that the projects in which they are meant for are being used. Then those who are giving the loans, when they begin to provide the experts, I mean, you send in the Americans, you send in from the Bretton Woods Institute, you also send the Britons again to come and be experts here. The money you are giving, we begin to pay you back from it, and you expect all sorts of interest from that loans, when your staff will carry them back to where they came from. These musicians that say, shine your eye, this is the time to shine your eye, Nigeria.
All right, indeed. But we're seeing that an early morning development that happened to find its way on this day, compared to other papers. This day, actually, although we did carry it here, it says Tinubu sacks Kiari, Akinyelure, and appoints Bayo Ojulari as the new GCEO of NNPCL. He reconstitutes the 11-man board with Ahmadu Kilda as a non-executive chairman and appointing members of the board from each geopolitical zone in the country. What do you expect from this move? First of all, what was your first reaction when you saw this or heard of this, and what do you expect of this new constitution and board he has made for the NNPCL?
I think that the president, many Nigerians have been expecting some of these changes because of the instability within the oil sector in Nigeria. But the president is very wise. When he's removing a Borno man, he's replacing the Borno man, so that the Borno people or northeast or maybe northern Nigeria will not complain and say this time around one of the key things is being taken away from them again. Also, he has also decided to appoint the Borno man. But again, one is worried as per but we have the crude, but you still see that Dangote, who came in, and we saw that there's going to be some stability. Okay, the oil, naira for crude extra buying has come to an end, and we are most likely going to those days. Well, we hope we don't, but we are seeing that the president is saying that in doing all of this, he's trying to inject some money, some investment into the sector, so that by 2027, 20 billion US, 30 billion US dollars will be in there, and when we reach the year 2030, 60 billion US dollars will be there, and that the crude oil, barrels will increase in their millions, and therefore making Nigeria to have more money. But we can have this same more money, and we now begin to look at again critical infrastructure. When will this infrastructure reach the poor man? Because we're talking of a situation where many people cannot parent, many people cannot go to work, Many people cannot go to hospital. People who are suffering from hypertension, diabetes, some common diseases, they cannot buy their drugs. And so it's a thing that is worrisome. Pensioners are worried. At the state level, you don't have some of these things. And so we hope that things will be better all the same.
All right, thank you very much, Ben Shemang, for always, making our time to join us in for a newspaper review and sharing your insights on the dailies, the headlines on the dailies. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And in case you just joined us, unfortunately, we've come to the tail end of our show this morning. We're just having a chat with Ben Shemang, who is the former director of news, Voice of Nigeria there, talking to us and sharing his insight on stories that makes the front pages of the dailies. Well, unfortunately, we've come to the end of Daybreak this morning. I hope you've been able to pick something, on the entire show this morning, starting from the discussion segment to the phone-in segment. Something I picked from the phone-in segment was when you are silent about the issues happening in Nigeria, it means you are in tandem and in agreement with what it is. Teach your children to speak up. From primary school to secondary school to university, there's a thin line between being outright arrogant and speaking up for what is right. So teach them to understand and know what is right and speak up when things are not going the right way, not just to favor them, but when things are wrong in the society in general that would affect them and everyone around them. That is what every Nigerian should teach their children, how to be selfless, especially when it comes to the issue concerning the country that would not just affect them, but affect everybody around them. Speaking up when it affects you alone doesn't solve the problem, but speaking up when it affects the entire nation and the future, that is where we could start by solving, the issues we have in the country and building the kind of Nigeria we deserve and our children deserve to live in. Well, having said that, on behalf of the production crew, we say a big thank you to everyone who took their time out to call in and join on the show this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Lilian Ogazi. Let's do this again tomorrow. Bye for now.